Everyone thought he was a nobody. Just a janitor, quietly walking through the endless airport halls. Nobody cared about his life, nobody even looked him in the eye. To them, he was invisible. But today, this day would change everything. Igor woke up, as usual, at 5 a.m. A cup of cheap coffee, an old uniform, worn-out sneakers. He walked to work, whispering to himself, just another day. Just another day. But deep inside, something felt different. The airport was buzzing. People were rushing, laughing, stressing out, sipping their coffee. And him, he just pushed his cart past them like a shadow. 2 flight attendants walked by, whispering sharp words that cut like a knife. Did you see his shoes? They're falling apart. Honestly, I'm surprised they still keep him here. Igor didn't respond. As always. But something inside clenched. He was used to the disrespect. Used to being underestimated. But this time, he would prove them wrong. He entered the waiting area. His eyes casually scanned the room. And then, he noticed a bag. Black, worn, but way too heavy for regular luggage. It sat by the trash can like it was waiting for someone. Igor looked around, nobody cared. His heart whispered, something's wrong. He leaned down, touched the bag. The fabric was cold, the zipper stiff. And when he opened it, his heart sank. Wires. A timer. Red digits blinking, 2:14. 2 minutes and 14 seconds. He froze. Dear God. A bomb? His palms went sweaty. Igor's eyes darted around, people sipping coffee, laughing, scrolling their phones. They had no idea death was sitting right next to them. He grabbed his phone, but, no signal. Underground level. His heartbeat pounded like a drum. His mind screamed, what do I do? Get it out. Try to disarm it. 2 minutes. He could feel time dripping like poison. And then, a voice behind him. Hey! What are you doing there? Igor spun around. A security guard. Young, cocky, already walking toward him. It's not what you think, Igor stammered, words stuck in his throat. The timer read 1:38. In that moment, he realized, no one would believe him. To them, he was just a janitor. If he said, bomb, they'd think he was insane. Or worse, accuse him of planting it. And time was running out. He looked at the bag. At the wires. And then, something clicked. Memories he had buried deep. A life he had hidden for years. He had seen this before. And once, he had saved lives. 1:10, Igor took a deep breath. If I don't do this, dozens will die. Maybe hundreds. And he stepped forward. Toward the bomb. The timer kept blinking. 01:09. 01:08. Each second sounded louder than the voices around him. Igor's chest tightened, and for the first time in years, his instincts kicked in. Instincts he thought he had buried forever. He grabbed the bag. It was heavy, too heavy, and the cold metal inside sent shivers through his hands. He tried to move fast, but the security guard's voice sliced through the chaos in his mind. Hey! Stop right there. Igor didn't even look back. He pushed forward, muscles burning, dragging the bag across the floor. People started to notice. A woman gasped, someone whispered, what is he doing? Cameras turned toward him. The invisible man was suddenly visible. And every eye in that terminal locked on him. 0:58, he darted toward the emergency exit, praying the alarm wouldn't slow him down. His breath was sharp, his heart hammering against his ribs like a war drum. Then he heard pounding footsteps, the guard was running after him. Put it down. Drop the bag. Igor shouted back, his voice cracking. "There's a bomb. Get everyone out of here." But the words sounded insane to them. Screams erupted. People scrambled in every direction. Phones came out, recording him. And now, he wasn't just visible. He was the headline of a breaking story. 042, he slammed his shoulder against the exit door, locked. Panic crawled up his spine. He spun around, scanning for options. That's when he saw him. A man in a black hoodie, standing too still near the escalators. Not panicking. Not running. Watching Igor. Their eyes met for a split second. And in that moment, Igor knew, this wasn't random. Someone put this here. Someone was waiting to see it happen. The man turned and started walking away. Calm. Almost slow. Igor's jaw clenched. Not this time. I won't let you win. He yanked a metal mop handle from his cart, jammed it into the door's panic bar. It gave way with a scream of metal, and the door burst open. Cold air hit his face. He dragged the bag outside, lungs burning, body shaking. 019, his mind raced. How many pounds of explosives? Is it wired to a phone? A timer? No time to analyze. Think. Think. And then, clarity. His training, buried for a decade, roared back to life. He tore open the bag. See, 4 blocks. Wires twisted like veins. A digital timer flashing red. He ripped his belt off, used it to hold the bag steady, his fingers moving faster than they had in years. 008, one wrong cut and it's over. But his hands were steady now. Just like before. Just like the man he used to be. Not a janitor. Not invisible. The world shrank to 2 wires, blue and red. His pulse matched the timer. 003, 002. And then, a voice behind him. Cold, sharp. Cut the wrong one, and they'll never find the pieces. Igor froze. The man in the black hoodie was standing there now, closer, a gun glinting in his hand. 001, click. The timer froze at 001. 1 second away from oblivion, and then, silence. No explosion. No fire. Just the sound of Igor's own heartbeat pounding in his ears. The man in the black hoodie tilted his head, a cold smile curling on his lips. Impressive, he said slowly, his voice like ice. I didn't think you still had it in you. Igor's hands trembled slightly, but his eyes burned with something the man hadn't seen in years, resolve. Who are you? Igor hissed, stepping back, his fingers still clutching the wire cutters. The man chuckled softly. Oh, come on. You know exactly who I am. Or have you forgotten the life you walked away from? Igor's chest tightened. A rush of memories hit him like a wave, desert heat, deafening blasts, the sound of screams, orders barked in the chaos of war. Years ago, he was more than a janitor. He was a bomb technician in a special operations unit. A hero, once. Until one mission went wrong. Until lives were lost, and he blamed himself. He swallowed hard, forcing his voice steady. That was a long time ago. I'm not that man anymore. The man's eyes narrowed. No, you're a coward. Hiding behind a mop and a paycheck. But today, you could be useful again. Igor glanced at the bag, the wires, the C4, the faint smell of chemicals. The bomb wasn't just a threat. It was a message. Why? Why here? Why these people? He demanded. The man stepped closer, lowering his voice. Because the world needs chaos. Order is a lie. And you used to understand that. Igor's stomach twisted. You think I'm going to help you? The man smirked. You already have. You showed me you still know what you're doing. Now, you're coming with me. Igor shook his head slowly, a cold fire rising in his chest. For years, he let the world think he was nothing. Invisible. But now, that invisibility was his weapon. Nobody would expect what he was about to do. He took a deep breath. I'm not going anywhere with you. The man raised an eyebrow, amused. Then what? You think you can stop me? Look around, Igor. Do you really think anyone will believe you? You're the crazy janitor with a bomb. You'll be their villain before the day ends. The words hit like bullets, but Igor didn't flinch. Because deep down, he knew the man was right, nobody believed in him. Nobody ever did. And that gave him the freedom to act. He slowly lowered the wire cutters, his mind racing. One move. One chance. He glanced over his shoulder, security alarms blared in the distance, sirens echoing faintly. Help was coming, but not fast enough. The man leaned closer, whispering. You have 10 seconds to decide whose side you're on. Yours, or mine. Igor's jaw clenched. 10 seconds to choose between the ghost of his past, and the man he wanted to be. And then, his eyes caught something behind the man. A reflection in the glass. A shadow moving closer. Was it security? Or another threat? The man noticed his glance and smiled. Tick-tock, Igor. The clock is always ticking. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with every heartbeat. Red and blue lights flickered across the glass doors as security and armed officers stormed the runway. The world was chaos now, alarms blaring, announcements screaming, evacuate immediately. Evacuate immediately. Igor raised his hands slowly, the wire cutters still dangling from his fingers. The bag lay at his feet, ripped open, the timer frozen on 0:01. He had stopped it. He had saved them all. But from the looks on the officers' faces, none of that mattered. On your knees. Hands behind your head, a voice thundered through a megaphone. Igor froze, his chest heaving. Wait. I'm not. Do it now. He dropped to his knees, fingers laced behind his head. Cold concrete bit into his skin. Boots thundered around him, guns aimed at his back. To them, he wasn't a hero. He was a suspect. From the corner of his eye, he saw movement, the man in the black hoodie, slipping through the crowd like a shadow. Calm, collected, blending in with panicked passengers. Their eyes met for the briefest moment. The man smiled. And then, he was gone. Igor's pulse spiked. Listen to me, he shouted as two officers grabbed his arms, forcing him down. There's another one out there. He's getting away. But they didn't hear him. Or maybe they didn't care. Cameras were flashing now, phones recording, broadcasting this moment to the world. The janitor who carried a bomb. The janitor who almost killed hundreds. That was the story they wanted. An officer yanked his wrists together, snapping on the cuffs. You're making a mistake. Igor growled, his voice cracking with desperation. Check the security cameras. He's the one you want. The officer leaned close, his tone sharp and cold. All we see is you, with the bomb. Igor's throat tightened. His mind spun with panic, not for himself, but for what was coming. Because he knew this wasn't over. This was just the beginning. They dragged him toward a line of police vehicles, lights flashing, sirens screaming. Through the chaos, Igor caught a glimpse of something on the ground, a phone. Not his. He recognized it immediately. Military grade, encrypted, modified. It was his style. The man in the hoodie had left it behind. A message, or a trap. Igor's breath hitched. He bent slightly as they shoved him forward, his fingers brushing the edge of the phone just long enough to slip it into his pocket without anyone noticing. As they shoved him into the back of a police van, his thoughts burned like fire. He's planning something bigger. This isn't about today. This isn't about the airport. And now, I'm the only one who can stop him. The door slammed shut. The sound of metal echoed like a prison bell. Outside, chaos still raged. Inside, Igor stared at the phone in his cuffed hands and whispered to himself. You wanted me back. Fine. I'm back. The interrogation room was cold. Sterile walls, a single metal table, a buzzing fluorescent light overhead. Igor sat with his hands cuffed to the chair, his reflection staring back from the dark glass panel on the wall. Behind that glass, he knew, eyes were watching. Judging. A heavy door creaked open. Two detectives walked in, one tall and broad-shouldered, the other sharp-eyed, holding a file. They didn't sit right away. They circled him like wolves sizing up prey. The sharp-eyed detective dropped the file on the table with a loud slap. Igor Mikhailov, he said slowly, almost savoring the name. 42 years old. Former EOD specialist, highly decorated. Until you disappeared off the grid. He leaned in, his voice low and dangerous. So tell me, hero, why did we find you with a live bomb in the middle of an airport? Igor met his stare without flinching. His voice was calm, steady, but his mind raced like a storm. Because someone wanted you to. The detective blinked, thrown off for a second. What does that mean? Igor leaned forward, the chain on his cuffs rattling softly. The man who planted that device, he's not done. This was just a test. A distraction. And while you're wasting time playing bad cop, he's already moving to the real target. The detectives exchanged a glance, part skepticism, part curiosity. And why should we believe you? The tall one asked, folding his arms. Igor's lips curled into a grim smile. Because you're holding the wrong man, and he knows you are. He let that sink in for a moment, then slowly slid something across the table with his fingertips, the phone he had taken. It glowed faintly, a single unread message flashing on the screen. The sharp-eyed detective snatched it up. What is this? A breadcrumb, Igor said, his voice like steel. He left it for me to find. Because this isn't about me. It's about what comes next. The detective tapped the screen, locked, encrypted, military grade. His jaw tightened. How did you get this? Igor shrugged lightly, almost amused. I'm a janitor. I notice things people ignore. The tension in the room thickened like smoke. The detective stepped out, murmuring in hushed tones, leaving Igor alone under the harsh light. His pulse steadied, his mind calculating. Every second they argued was another second the man in the hoodie was ahead of him. Igor closed his eyes, replaying every detail, his face, his walk, the way he vanished into the crowd. Old instincts roared back to life. Patterns. Routes. Behavior. The man wasn't improvising. He had a plan. A big one. And Igor knew he had less than 12 hours before the next strike. The door swung open again, but this time it wasn't the detectives. It was a uniformed officer, young, nervous. We're transferring him to holding, he said quickly, unlocking the cuffs. Igor stood slowly, his wrists sore, his mind sharp as a blade. He had no intention of going to holding. Not when lives were on the line. As they walked down the corridor, Igor's eyes scanned every detail, the exit sign, the key card on the officer's belt, the cameras in the corners. The plan was forming in his head like a blueprint. And then, as they turned a corner, Igor whispered under his breath, almost like a promise. You wanted me back. You're gonna regret that. The hallway stretched endlessly, the echo of footsteps pounding in Igor's ears. The young officer held his arm loosely, unaware that the quiet man he was escorting was already planning his next move. Igor's mind was sharp, calculating every detail. The angle of the cameras. The weight of the cuffs. The keycard hanging carelessly from the officer's belt. They turned a corner. Two guards stood ahead, laughing over something on a phone. Nobody was paying attention. Nobody ever did. That was Igor's gift, being invisible. And tonight, invisibility would save lives. He slowed his pace, letting his shoulders slump, his breathing deepen. "You okay back there?" the officer asked, glancing over his shoulder. Igor nodded weakly, muttering, "Just dizzy." The officer moved closer, adjusting his grip. And that was all Igor needed. With a swift, silent motion, his cuffed hands flicked forward just enough to slide the keycard from the belt. It vanished under his sleeve before the officer even blinked. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. They stepped inside. Igor stared at the glowing numbers, the hum of the cables. His heartbeat matched the rhythm of the moving lift. The officer yawned, scrolling on his phone. And then, click. Igor hit the emergency stop. The elevator jerked violently, lights flickering. "What the, hey? What are you doing?" Igor didn't answer. He pried the doors open with sheer force, metal groaning under his strength. Below them, a maintenance shaft stretched into darkness. "Wait. You can't." But Igor was already gone, slipping into the shadows like smoke, vanishing before the officer could even call for help. Minutes later, chaos erupted on the security floor. Alarms screamed. Radios crackled with frantic voices. "Suspect escaped. All units, lock down now." But Igor was already outside, moving fast through the maze of service corridors he knew better than anyone. For years, he cleaned these halls, unseen, ignored. Tonight, that knowledge was his weapon. Cold night air hit his face as he slipped out a side door. Sirens blared behind him, flashing lights painting the fog in blue and red. Igor pulled the phone from his pocket. It buzzed in his hand, a new message pulsing on the screen. One word. Harbor. His stomach nodded. The harbor wasn't just a target, it was a disaster waiting to happen. Cargo ships. Fuel tanks. Thousands of lives in the blast radius. If the next bomb went off there, the airport would look like nothing. He moved fast, cutting through alleyways, disappearing into the city's underbelly. No badge. No backup. No weapons. Just his instincts, and the ghost of the man he used to be. By the time he reached the harbor, the night was heavy with mist. Cranes loomed like skeletons against the moon, their arms stretching into the sky. Shadows danced between shipping containers stacked like tombstones. Igor's breath curled in the cold as he scanned the darkness. And then, he saw him. A lone figure in a black hoodie, standing near the water's edge, calm as the sea itself. Waiting. Watching. Igor stepped out of the shadows, his voice cutting through the fog. "You don't give up, do you?" The man turned slowly, a sly smile creeping across his face. "Neither do you. I knew you'd come." Igor's fists clenched at his sides. Why the harbor? Why so many innocent people? The man tilted his head, his tone almost casual. "Because fear is power. And power is freedom." Igor's jaw tightened. "You think killing strangers makes you free?" The man chuckled softly. "Not just strangers, Igor. This world is broken. I'm just speeding up the collapse." Igor took another step forward, his eyes cold and steady. "You're wrong. You think chaos makes you strong. It makes you a coward." The man laughed again, but there was no humor in it. Big words for someone who spent years hiding with a mop in his hand. "Do you really think anyone will see you as a hero? To them, you're still nothing." Igor smiled faintly, the first real smile in years. "That's the thing about being invisible. Nobody sees you coming." The man frowned slightly, sensing something was wrong. And then, blue and red lights exploded through the fog. Sirens wailed. Dozens of agents swarmed from every direction, their shouts cutting through the night. Hands in the air. Don't move. The man spun, eyes wide with shock. Igor raised his hands slowly, not in surrender, but in victory. You wanted me back, he said calmly. You got me. The man snarled as they cuffed him, his voice dripping with venom. This isn't over, Igor. There are more like me. You can't stop us all. Igor's gaze hardened, his voice quiet but sharp as a blade. Then I'll be there. As they dragged the bomber away, the lead detective approached Igor, awe in his eyes. How did you do it? How did you know? Igor shrugged lightly, the fog curling around him like a cloak. I'm a janitor, he said softly. I clean up messes. And with that, he turned and walked into the mist, just another shadow in a city that would never know his name. But tonight, thousands were alive because of the man nobody ever noticed. And for Igor, that was enough.